I've been noticing the libs crowing about how Maria Corina Machado had won the Nobel Prize instead of Trump, and Trump is probably fuming. Oh my God. Can you believe it? Trump was beaten by a humanitarian campaigner for democracy.
Yeah, that's what she is. Definitely.
Yeah, that is. There's this article that I saw today, and I'll put it in the show notes, titled, "When Maria Corina Machado Wins the Nobel Peace Prize, Peace Has Lost All Meaning." So, to quote the article, Machado's politics are steeped in violence. She has called for foreign intervention, even appealing directly to Benjamin Netanyahu, the architect of the Gaza annihilation, to liberate Venezuela with bombs under the banner of freedom. She's demanded sanctions, which are a silent form of warfare, whose effects, as studies in The Lancet and other journals show, have killed more people than war, cutting off medicine, food, and energy to entire populations. Machado has spent her entire political life promoting division, is eroding Venezuelan sovereignty, and denying its people the right to live with dignity. And here's a laundry list of things that Maria Corina Machado has done. She helped lead a 2002 right-wing coup that briefly overthrew a democratically elected president and signed the Carmona Decree that erased the Constitution and dissolved every public institution overnight. She worked hand-in-hand with Washington to justify regime change, using her platform to demand foreign military intervention to liberate Venezuela through force. She cheered on Donald Trump's threats of invasion and his naval deployments in the Caribbean, a show of force that risks igniting regional war under the pretext of, quote, combating narco-trafficking. While Trump sent warships and froze assets, Machado stood ready to serve as his local proxy, promising to deliver Venezuelan sovereignty on a silver platter. She pushed for U.S. sanctions that strangled the economy, knowing exactly who would pay the price: the poor, the sick, and the working class. She helped construct the so-called interim government, a Washington, D.C.-based puppet show run by a self-appointed president, quote, who looted Venezuela's resources abroad while children at home went hungry. And she vows to reopen Venezuela's embassy in Jerusalem, aligning herself openly with the same apartheid state that bombs hospitals and calls it self-defense. And now she wants to hand over the country's oil, water, and infrastructure to private corporations. This is the same recipe that made Latin America the laboratory of neoliberal misery in the 1990s. She's also one of the political architects of La Salida, the 2014 opposition campaign that called for escalated protests, including guarimba tactics. Those weren't peaceful protests, as the foreign press claimed. They were organized barricades meant to paralyze the country and force the government's fall. Protests turned violent, and buses carrying workers were torched, and people suspected of being Chavista were beaten and killed. And an ambulances of doctors were attacked, and some Cuban medical brigades were almost burned alive. Public buildings, food trucks, and schools were destroyed, and entire neighborhoods were held hostage, while opposition leaders like Machado cheered from the sidelines and called it resistance. She is a figurehead for the bourgeois right and the far right in Venezuela. She's Venezuela's white supremacists are well represented in the ranks of her supporters. And I guess Donald Trump got owned by the person that he wants to be the proxy ruler of Venezuela after the decapitation strikes that he is undoubtedly going to unleash upon Venezuela soon.
Yeah, like very soon. Like even in the next, I don't know, couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks.
Maybe. Venezuela called an emergency meeting at the UN to discuss the United States' pending actions against it. And Gustavo Petro recently condemned the United States for blowing up a Colombian vessel recently.
You know what I have for that item? I just wrote Nobel Prize for Gusano Lady.
Yeah, Nobel Prize for Gusano Lady. Exactly. So this has escalated into a broader diplomatic crisis. Colombia has accused the United States of infringing upon its sovereignty now and killing its citizens. And Latin American leaders are rallying to Petro's side because they do not want their sovereignty infringed upon by the U.S. any more than it already has been.
Which is already kind of a lot. If you live in a country south of the Rio Grande, it's a lot.
All right. Well, moving on. In Palestine, apparently there's a ceasefire. Trump is claiming credit for it, but this looks to be the same ceasefire that the Arab states have been putting forward since the beginning of the conflict. But it Trump probably can take credit for it. There are several reports that claim that Trump rammed through this ceasefire just before the voting for the Nobel Prize was concluded. Trump's goons have been campaigning for Trump to win for a few months now. But so the ceasefire has been signed by the Israelis and Hamas, and it includes several prisoners being released. Like I think 200 and something prisoners that were given life sentences by the Israelis are to be released to Hamas, and Hamas will return the rest of the remains and the surviving prisoners that it captured on October 7th, most of whom were Israeli military personnel.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I don't know. I'm sure if you really call them prisoners, but
no, well, the prisoners of war.
yeah, sure.
And then Israel is supposedly going to withdraw to an orange line that has been designated before the October 7th incursion. And Palestinians have already started to return home. There's lots of images of Palestinians moving from the designated, concentration camps that the Israelis put them in back to their homes, which are all rubble now at this point, in order to start rebuilding. But at the same time, Israel's still launching attacks in Gaza. So, I don't think that this is going to hold. There's not a fucking chance that this holds.
I think I've heard it was like 17 people have been killed by the IDF like today, but it is way down from like 200. And what was the phony humanitarian Gaza humanitarian fund, the people that were allowed to distribute aid, who were like killing lots of whatever, killing hundreds of people every day. They are done away with. So that's good. Like, I think that this is if for people in Gaza, this is a moment to celebrate. But
I mean, they're cheering in the streets, and I pray to God that it holds, because it's been a genocide, and those are bad.
Yeah,
I'm glad that
because the ceasefire is literally necessary. There's no two ways about it.
The Onion, there was an Onion headline that I saw that says Israel agrees to go back to killing Palestinians in smaller numbers.
So it's
not incorrect. That's completely accurate.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to Europe. So former German Chancellor Angela Merkel is drawing criticism from Poland and the Baltic states because she said that EU-Russia dialogue was impeded by the Baltic states and Poland in 2021. And she says that was directly led to Putin's invasion of Ukraine. She made these comments during an interview with the Hungarian outlet Partizan. She didn't directly blame them for war, but she blamed them for shutting down the process of dialogue between Europe and Russia. She said that in 2021, she and Emmanuel Macron proposed direct talks between the EU and Russia to de-escalate tensions related to Ukraine breaking the Minsk agreements, which, I mean, when I say breaking, I mean never implementing the Minsk agreements.
Right.
And according to Merkel, that initiative was blocked by the Baltic states and Poland, who feared that the EU would not maintain a, quote, unified policy on Russia. And of course, this has made the Poland and the Baltics very angry. And the Polish one of the Polish ministers, defense minister, I think it's defense minister, who I didn't write down which minister it was, said that that Merkel is the worst chancellor in German history.
Wow.
I kind of feel like, as a Polish person, there might be one chancellor in German history who's worse for the Poles than Angela Merkel.
Yeah, that's a that's what's known as a strong stance to take.
So between 17 and 21% of Polish people were killed by Hitler in World War II. So I think there might be a worse chancellor in German history.
Yeah, that's probably true.
On top of the fact, you could just, there are several other German chancellors like Bethlen Hollweg or like Otto von Bismarck, who exerted direct military and economic control over the Polish people during their tenure as chancellor. I think that might be worse for the Poles also. Anyway, so basically you're seeing the cracks opening up in the EU. And we talk about the cracks in the EU that have been caused by the Russia-Ukraine conflict all the time. And that actually segues really good into an article that was on Ukraine called Polish Imperialism Rising with a question mark. And this is, we're not going to be able to do this article justice. So y'all just need to go read this. Y'all need to subscribe to Events in Ukraine and read this article. But anyway, the article is about Poland's growing militarism and economic nationalism that is being spurred on by the war in Ukraine. And the author says that Poland is attempting to become, quote, European Israel, a NATO-funded military industrial hub built on U.S. backing, EU funds, and Ukrainian labor. And says that Poland's rise as both an economic and ideological project blends Atlanticism, anti-Russian sentiment, and ambitions of regional dominance.
They're trying something new.
Yeah.
I wish I could think of the name of this. I should have thought of it. What was the Pilsudski era, the name for the kind of Polish hegemonic entity?
The Intermarium?
Yes, the Intermarium. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a new Intermarium.
The Międzymorzi. Międzymorzi. Yeah, the Intermarium is the Międzymorzi, which is the political plan concocted by Józef Pilsudski to basically reunite the former Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, take parts of, I guess, in all of Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania. I don't know if it would like be directly under his control or if it was part of like a union, but Polish control would be the former Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which includes Ukraine, parts of Belarus, and Western Russia, and then the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania.
Sort of like an EU, but only, but one that Poland controls.
Right. So he pitches this as a conflict, as there being like a triumph of New Europe, which is Poland and the Baltics, over Old Europe, which is Germany and France. Because Germany and France once sought limited cooperation with Russia, and they were sidelined, as we mentioned in the previous article, by Poland and the Baltics, who now sort of control policy in regard to Russia. Former Polish finance minister Radek Sikorski celebrated the Nord Stream 2's destruction as a symbolic act of this geopolitical shifts. And the EU's internal socioeconomic problems, like in Southern Europe, are completely overshadowed by anti-Russian militarization, like deindustrialization in Germany, rising cost of energy, gas shortages, the downturn in the economies, the looming recession or current recession, depending on who you talk to, don't matter. The only thing that matters is beating Russia right now.
Right.
Germany has largely been deindustrialized due to a loss of cheap energy and competition with East Asia. But what that does is that it opens up room for Poland to become Europe's new industrial hub, particularly in defense manufacturing, but in auto manufacturing as well. And that would be done with poor Ukrainian refugees who are seeking shelter in Poland, who would be willing to work for less than Poles would be willing to work in these growing industries. Poland also has like the same demographic crisis that the entire developed world is having right now, and worse because they're one of the countries that was affected by World War II. They're in a prime position to be able to take advantage of the influx of refugees from Ukraine and the ongoing war. The Baltic states aren't. They're too small and depopulated, so they can't really do that. All they could really do is attach themselves to bigger states for protection.